The 2025 NFL schedule is officially out, and for the Las Vegas Raiders, it's raising some eyebrows. Some fans believe the team got the short end of the stick, especially when it comes to travel. While that might be a bit of a stretch, there's definitely some truth to the challenges ahead. So let's break it all down. We already knew the opponents months ago, but now we finally have the full layout: dates, locations, and matchups. And that makes all the difference. Are there long road stretches? Back-to-back East Coast games? Do the Raiders get any breaks with homestands? That's what we're diving into. Preseason breakdown. Let's start with the preseason. While exact dates haven't been finalized, we do know the matchups. Game 1, Seattle Seahawks. Game 2, San Francisco 49ers. Game 3, Arizona Cardinals. How the Raiders approach preseason snaps is still a mystery. Under previous regimes, we saw starters like Josh Jacobs and even Max Crosby take the field. Some teams keep their starters on the sideline the entire preseason, especially coaches like PeteCarroll, who rarely risk key players. So the big question is, will the Raiders play their starters? And if so, which game? Typically, if one team plays starters, the other does too. So if Vegas rolls them out against Seattle, San Francisco, or Arizona, expect a competitive dress rehearsal. Primetime spotlight now, onto the regular season, where it counts. The Raiders have 3 primetime games locked in. Week 2, home opener versus the Los Angeles Chargers on Monday Night Football Week 10. Road game at Denver on Thursday Night Football Week. 11 hosting the Dallas Cowboys on another Monday Night Football slot. That's 2 Monday nights and 1 Thursday night. Also worth noting, Week 17 and 18 are currently marked TBD, which means there's potential for a Saturday or Sunday night game to be flexed into primetime. So while 3 are confirmed, that number could climb to 5. Regardless of the time slot, fans are going to tune in. But the primetime placement adds extra shine to big matchups. Early season travel woes? Now here's where things get tricky. The travel before the bye week. The Raiders open the season on September 7th against the New England Patriots in Foxborough. That's a long flight to the East Coast to start the year. After that, they return home to face the Chargers on Monday night. But then, they head right back across the country to play the Washington Commanders. That's a lot of miles in a short stretch. It's this early season schedule, bouncing coast to coast in a 3-week window, that has fans concerned. It's a real challenge, especially for a team trying to start fast in a competitive AFC. Tough stretch or opportunity? In Week 5, the Raiders travel to Indianapolis to face the Colts, another stop in a demanding early season schedule. When you look at the first 5 games, it's clear there's a lot of back and forth between time zones. That kind of travel takes a toll. Anyone who's gone from the West Coast to the East Coast knows the 3-hour time difference is no joke. And historically, West Coast teams do struggle in those early start games back east. But let's look at the matchups, because despite the travel, the schedule might be more favorable than it appears. New England Patriots, Week 1. Yes, it's a cross-country road game to start the season, but this Patriots team isn't the powerhouse it once was. Rookie quarterback Drake May is still developing, and while there's excitement around young players like Kyle Williams, this is a game the Raiders should expect to win. New England is rebuilding. Las Vegas, meanwhile, is aiming to compete now. Los Angeles Chargers, Week 2, home opener. A Monday Night Football matchup at home against the Chargers. That's another winnable opportunity. While Justin Herbert has all the tools, there's growing skepticism about whether he's truly a top-tier quarterback. Talent aside, the results haven't always matched the hype. The Chargers have potential, but they're far from consistent. Washington Commanders, Week 3, road game. The Commanders made a surprising playoff run last year behind a rookie quarterback and first-year head coach. But we've seen this story before. Early success often gives way to second-year regression. Teams figure things out. Offensive schemes get exposed. Think of the fall-off we saw with Cliff Kingsbury and the Cardinals. Expecting Washington to repeat last year's success might be a stretch. This game? Another one the Raiders can absolutely win. Chicago Bears, Week 4, home game. Next up is a home game against the Chicago Bears. Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, will still be adjusting to the speed of the NFL. He has talent, no question, but he's also young, and the Raiders have the advantage of experience on their side in this matchup. Indianapolis Colts, Week 5, road game. Another road trip, this time to Indy. closes out this early 5-game stretch. Again, the travel is tough, but the upside is that the Raiders are getting many of these long trips out of the way early in the season. If Las Vegas can come out of the first 5 weeks with a 4-1 or 3-2 record, especially after logging so many miles, they'll be in a strong position moving forward. This is a team that looks better on paper heading into 2025, and outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, there's not a single opponent in this stretch that should feel unbeatable. Midseason outlook and a favorable stretch. Outside of the Kansas City Chiefs, there's really only one team on the Raiders' 2025 schedule that feels truly elite, and that's the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, it's not that the Raiders can't beat the Eagles. Anything can happen in this league. But let's be honest, Philly, along with teams like the Bills and Ravens, are part of that upper tier. They're built to win 12 to 14 games a year. And fortunately, the Raiders don't face many of those teams this season. In fact, across the first 7 weeks, there are multiple games where the Raiders could be favorites. Outside of the Chiefs matchup, most of these contests are very winnable. Even the Commanders game should be tight on the betting line. So while this early stretch involves a lot of travel, it might not be as brutal as some think, especially if PeteCarroll's team shows up ready. Worst case scenario, still manageable. Let's say things don't start out as planned. Worst case scenario, losses to the Patriots, Chargers, and Commanders, but wins over the Bears, Colts, and Titans, followed by a loss to the Chiefs. That puts the Raiders at 3-4 heading into the Week 8 bye. Not ideal, but far from the end of the season. Post-bye advantage. After the bye, the Raiders return to face the Jacksonville Jaguars. Thanks to the timing of the bye and how the schedule falls, they'll have plenty of rest going into that game. And they'll need it, because just 4 days later, they're back in action for Thursday Night Football against the Broncos. That's a tough turnaround, but it comes with a bonus. Following the Broncos game, the Raiders get another mini-bye, with a Monday Night Football matchup against the Dallas Cowboys on November 17th. That's 11 full days between games, another stretch to rest, reset, and prepare. So while that 2-game stretch post-bye is tough, the schedule actually gives the Raiders time to recover and regroup. Favorable second-half matchups. And looking ahead, the back half of the schedule is filled with winnable games. The Jaguars are good, but beatable. The Broncos in Denver is never easy, but it's still a game the Raiders can take. The Cowboys? Talented, sure, but they've got roster questions, cap issues, and a shaky playoff track record. The Browns don't have a settled quarterback situation. That offense could be a mess by late November. A rematch against the Chargers, this time at home. Very winnable. A second matchup with the Broncos, too. Another divisional opportunity. From the bye week through Week 15, the Raiders could realistically stack 5 or 6 wins. If they head into the Week 14 game against the Eagles with an 8-4 record, that game becomes not just a measuring stick. It could shape playoff seeding, momentum, and more. A path toward playoffs, it's there. If this Raiders team plays to its potential, that Week 14 game against the Eagles could be one of the biggest in years. Not just for the Raiders, but for the league. It'll be in Philly, but don't be surprised if you hear a loud silver and black presence in the stands. RaiderNation runs deep and strong, especially around Philly, Pittsburgh, and the Northeast. After that, the Raiders close out the season with the Texans, Giants, and then a home game against the Chiefs. That Week 18 matchup could be massive. Or it could be a gift. Why? If the Chiefs have already clinched the number 1 seed, they might sit their starters. That happened just last season. Kansas City rested key players and handed the Broncos a win that nearly got them into the playoffs. It's not crazy to think the Raiders could benefit from a similar situation. The best direction in over a decade now. Look, we've all been burned before. On paper, things have looked good for the Raiders plenty of times. But when it's time to put it on the field, it hasn't always translated. That said, this season feels different. This might be the best direction the Raiders have been on in 10 to 15 years. The only recent stretch that comes close was that 2016 to 2017 window. Back then, the team was young, explosive, and headed towards something special, until coaching changes and front office decisions derailed the momentum. Today, with PeteCarroll at the helm and Patrick Graham coordinating a talented defense, the Raiders are building something that feels sustainable. And it's not just about the coaching, it's about the roster. If rookie guard Caleb Rogers turns out to be just solid, Not elite, just a top 30 guard. That's a big win. If DJ Glaze locks down the right tackle spot, the Raiders suddenly have a good offensive line. Add in the weapons, a capable quarterback, and an elite defensive line, and the foundation is there. Best case scenario, it's not unrealistic. Let's say this team clicks, wins over the Patriots, Chargers, Commanders, Bears, Colts, and Titans. A loss to the Chiefs, sure, that's always a battle. A bounce-back win over the Jags, maybe a tough road loss in Denver, but then winnable home games against the Cowboys and Browns. Let the Chargers, Eagles, and Texans have their wins. Even then, the Raiders could finish 11-6 or even 12-5. It's not a stretch. The schedule is favorable, and the AFC is in a unique transition. Most teams the Raiders face are rolling with first- or second-year quarterbacks. Patriots, Commanders, Bears, Titans, and Giants, all starting young guys. Colts have Anthony Richardson, but he missed most of last year. He's still raw. Browns might start a rookie. Even the Cowboys, by late in the season, who knows? Joe Milton could be starting if Dak struggles. The Texans have CJ Stroud, who's legit, but outside of the Chiefs, Chargers, and Eagles, most of these matchups tilt in the Raiders' favor defensively. Make the most of it now. This is a year the Raiders can take advantage of the NFL's youth movement at quarterback. And with a relatively soft schedule, solid roster, and experienced coaching staff, the opportunity is there. Make no mistake. Next year's schedule will be harder. But this year, this is the window. The Raiders have the tools, they have the talent, and for the first time in a long time, they just might have the timing too. The leap is possible. Just look at Washington. What I'm hoping for, and I think it's realistic, is that the Raiders make the kind of leap the Commanders made last season. Think about it. 2 years ago, Washington had one of the worst records in football. Then they cleaned up the trenches, found an identity, and boom. They're in the divisional round and fighting for a conference title a season later. That kind of turnaround can happen fast in the NFL, especially if you build in the right places. The Raiders did just that. Revamped the offensive line, retained key defensive pieces like Adam Butler and Malcolm Kunsey, let go of a few players who were about to get paid. And that made sense. Brought in young talent to step in and fill those roles. Now it comes down to performance. Can Geno Smith recapture the form he showed a couple seasons ago? Can Chip Kelly create rhythm, motion, and points with the tools he's got? We're about to find out. Favorable? Unfavorable? You decide. So, what do you think? How many games do you think the Raiders can win with this schedule? Do you see it as favorable or unfavorable? Personally, I see both. There are definitely some tough stretches, but also winnable opportunities, especially with all the young quarterbacks the Raiders will face this year. This is the NFL, man. You're going to get a mixed bag. Some teams get a rough road, others catch a break. In terms of travel distance, the Raiders are right in the middle of the pack, around 18,000 miles for the year. Compare that to the Chargers, who have the most travel in the league at over 37,000 miles. That's a massive difference. And part of that is likely because of international games, which come with their own headaches. Long flights, different time zones, and messed up routines. If the Chargers do have two of those, that's a real disadvantage and something the Raiders won't have to deal with. So again, I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Let me know how many wins you think the Raiders can pull off this year. Smash that thumbs up, and if you haven't already, subscribe. We've got more breakdowns coming your way. Let's keep it rolling.